How are some authors able to consistently hit deadline after deadline, producing thousands of words in a single writing session and making steady progress towards completing their manuscripts? I remember frequently feeling really frustrated as I wrestled with concepts and trying to get my plot and my characters and my descriptions to all sync up and flow beautifully, watching the clock tick away as the time I had carved out for writing in the middle of a busy life and work and regular schedule felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Well, if you can relate, then this is the perfect video for you, because today I'm going to be sharing with you the one single writing technique that absolutely changed the game for me and helped me massively increase my productivity. This one technique helped me go from struggling to write a few hundred words in a writing session to being able to pretty consistently produce 2,000 or 3,000 words in a couple-hour writing session, which ultimately contributed to me being able to write and publish 3 full books in my Farshar Chronicles series in just a little over 6 months. So let's not waste any time and jump straight into talking about the TK method. So TK is an editorial mark that stands for to come. A lot of professional authors apply it and talk about it or champion it. I first encountered it and learned it from Shawn Coyne, who is actually Steven Pressfield's editor and also the author of The Story Grid, which is a book I highly recommend as an aside. But I heard him talking about it on one of the podcast episodes of his that I was listening to, and it kind of set off a light bulb in my brain. In short, TK is an editorial mark that you can use anywhere in your draft at any point in the writing process to indicate a concept or an idea or a further bit of prose or functionally anything that you're going to come back and expand on or add later. Now, the reason this is so useful is that the final form of a really good bit of prose or a really well-structured chapter involves a lot of nuance and interconnected parts. But the first stage of any chapter has to be the process of going from a blank screen to written text. And that process is hard enough and challenging enough on its own for a whole number of reasons. So it's important to not allow ourselves in that drafting process to get fixated on polishing or perfecting individual lines of prose or trying to do storycraft or construction elements while we're in the process of generating the draft. In your own writing, I'm sure you have experienced what it can feel like to stare at a screen trying to come up with the perfect name for a character. And you know it's important because this is maybe your antagonist or another significant character that's going to play a heavy role in the story. You need the name to be good. And so you spend a large portion of a writing session that could have been used to more fruitfully produce like draft content just noodling on a name and writing one, deleting it, not sure if it's good enough, or you spend minutes upon minutes or maybe even longer trying to get that perfect turn of phrase for an important description of a major location, or some effective lines of dialogue that don't sound canned or cliched as two characters are having an argument and you want them to actually sound intelligent and for the dialogue to be dynamic and to move quickly. I tend to think of certain sections of any scene or chapter as the high lift sections, the portions that are going to do a lot of work either within the plot or within the emotional context of the scene or the visible description to paint the picture for your reader as they're following along. And those high lift sections can take a lot of work to get right. So what this TK method allows you to do is to sort of put a pin in your manuscript that makes it easy to come back and find those sections again when you move forward into more revision or polish or expansion processes within your writing, which are much easier to do when that's the mindset that you're in after you have completed a draft. So going back to our example of stalling out on the name for your antagonist, rather than banging your head against your keyboard, you can instead just write antag and then capital letters TK, or a lot of times I will put TK in brackets to make it even more visible and distinctive and easier to search for. And there you go. Time and effort saved. You can utilize antag or antagonist TK as the name of your character for your entire draft of your manuscript if you need to, until you settle on the exact perfect name. And then you're just a simple Control F or Command F search function away from finding that term everywhere in your manuscript, and you can do a quick find replace and suddenly the name is right where it needed to be, and you didn't waste a single minute stalling out trying to nuance or perfect a name. You were able to continue moving forward with the actual writing of the draft of that chapter, and then the chapter after that, and the chapter after that. Now, by now, I'm sure you have realized that TK does not actually spell to come. That should be TC. The reason we use TK as an editorial mark, like many other editorial marks which are intentionally misspelled, is to make it easier to find them and separate them from more common letter combinations, which TC is one. There are a lot of words in English that have TC adjacent. TK is far less common, and if you put it in brackets, it's even easier still to do a quick search for exactly what you're looking for. So once you are finished and you're going back and sitting down to do a revision of a scene, or the complete revision process for your manuscript overall, you can search for either just TK to find all instances of it anywhere in that section of your book, or for more specific things, search terms that have TK, like antagonist TK, you can search for that and find it quickly and easily, separate it out from the rest of your draft, which is why it's TK instead of TC. Now, there are two reasons that I think this is such a breakthrough technique. The first is practical. It allows you, as we've already discussed, to skip straight over the heavy creative workload of the more nuanced or difficult or technical aspects of your writing. But what I've found is that those sections, for as much as they trip you up and slow you down, generally represent only about 20 to 30% of the writing in a given scene, and large portions of it are much more easily written. By allowing myself to write the pieces I'm prepared to write now and save the sections I'm not quite ready for one reason or another for a future writing session, it just dramatically improves my writing output in any given writing session and allows me to get more done and make more progress. But the second reason I think is more of a mindset benefit, which is that applying the TK method continually reminds my brain that when you are drafting, it is time to draft. And it allows me to sort of separate myself from thinking of the draft as a finished product, because sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, I'm intentionally inserting unfinished roughness and focusing more on crafting the story, telling the story, moving the draft forward, rather than getting stuck in the weeds, which often, if I'm being honest, serves more as a form of procrastination or fear, as I allow myself to get intimidated thinking about exactly what people are going to think about this one sentence, or getting sucked into research or further world building or note-taking, rather than doing the sometimes difficult work of sitting down and just producing the story and moving the ball forward. And you can use this TK method in a lot of really useful and creative ways. I've already talked about how you can use it as a placeholder for names, but you can actually use it as a placeholder for whole sections of prose within your scene. Let's say that you're writing the big car chase scene in the thriller that you're working on, and you know that you need to have a lot of really creative beats and moments within that action scene that both reveal your protagonist's skill and personality and also keep the audience right on the edge of their seat, and that's going to take some thought and some work. Well, maybe instead of laboring over that and, beating your head against a wall, you can save that scene for later by simply writing big car chase TK and then picking up at the point where your protagonist steps away from the smoldering, flaming wreckage of the cars behind him and continues into the section that you're clearer on and ready to write. And then in a future writing session, when your head is clear and you have a better handle on exactly what kinds of things you want to happen in that space, you can sit down for a writing session where all you're going to do is work on writing out the details of that scene. I frequently use the TK method to help me not get stuck in descriptive writing. I find writing descriptions is one of the places that I most easily get stalled out, because it is a part of the overall draft that really needs some careful attention. And so very often I will simply put, castle hallway description TK or some other shorthand that makes it easy for me to remember that I need a couple sentences here when my protagonist walks in and sees this space for the first time. And I'm going to come back and do that later. But right now, I'm ready to move forward because I'm actually going to write the very important, interaction scene that the protagonist has with the king in the castle or whatever it is, that I'm ready to move forward and write. So I'll put, description shorthand TK, come back and do that later. Now, I will admit that I was a little bit skeptical when I first heard of this method. I wasn't sure if it would work for me, but I found that as soon as I applied it, my writing efficiency increased dramatically because I was able to avoid the sticking points, keep moving forward, and keep my head in the drafting phase of the process so that I could finish stories much, much faster and with a lot less headache along the way. So here's my challenge for you. In your next writing session, challenge yourself to apply this TK method and just test it out. See how it works for you. My guess is that just like it did for me, it's going to help improve your writing productivity. And if you can get more words written in the same amount of time, you'll be able to finish books faster and more effectively. If you found this video helpful, then I would really appreciate a like on the video to help other people find it as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the Story Castle for in-depth discussions of writing craft and storytelling principles and publishing tips and techniques every week.